What's up, guys? I was doing a little digging around, and I thought I'd make a video. But first, I'm gonna clean this off the table and do a little myth busting. And number one thing is, I am not. I've never once sit here and claim that the official history that we're given is accurate. Actually, that's why I started the channel, because I've done a lot of research that runs counter to that, like this. An earthquake in Rome, which killed all of the cardinals, met in conclave to elect a new pope. So all of the cardinals meet in one building, and they throw smoke, throw stuff in the fire to make white and black smoke come out so all the public can do it. Anyway, while they were in an assembly, the whole building fell in on them. And according to this was in 1287. Questionable on the dates. This is from a 200-year-old book. Now, you go ahead and go Google and find this on Google. I'll wait. Yeah, it's not there. See, I've done a lot of research that uncovers stuff like this. But I see a lot of people that have been duped by grifters on here because people lived in buildings for the last thousands of years, when I thought that everybody was living in log cabins in the 1800s. Okay, and I'm quoting somebody on this. I'm not going to say his name, but literally said that, and it just shows they have no concept of history whatsoever. And then claims like this that are just seriously okay. Wizard was being carved in on Mount Rushmore, but a 15-minute video where it went into about 60 seconds of Mount Rushmore and said that it's more believable that these were already there than that people carved these a couple hundred years ago. First off, there's video of this being made. And secondly, what you're actually claiming is that Mount Rushmore has always been here in America, and that they, hired actors to play the part of Abe Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt, who we actually have photographs of, not just paintings like George Washington. So that's the way that went down? Seriously? So I'm trying to rush through this as fast as possible, make this as short as possible for short attention span theater. But I'm going to go through every step it takes to create these big, magnificent Tatarian structures by hand in this video real fast. Because this building was still being made in the 1970s in Ireland. Yeah, there's a modern crane there. I'm going to cover that too. First off, digging a hole. It's scary that we live in such a coddled society now that people don't think that people can dig holes by hand. And I'm talking big 20 to 40 foot deep holes for the big megalithic churches and everything. Or not megalithic, but Gothic churches. Over in India here, we got 6 to 8 people that are digging a 20 foot deep well, 20 feet around. It takes them 2 weeks to do this. And I can already hear the yeah buts. There's no rocks in there. Okay, let's cover that. This well is about twice as deep, about 40 feet, I'm guessing. And they have big, huge stones. When we get up to the top, you'll see all the big pile of stones. All you got to do is have a guy with a pickaxe busting everything up, and then you got to have a way to get it out of there. And are they using a big, fancy metal crane with electric motor and all that on here? No, they're using a wooden crane that's been around for thousands of years. That was a 3-foot round rock that they just pulled out. And it's not even that big of a crane. That's like a 4-inch pole that they're using. Here's the Cologne Theater that's still under construction after the invention of the camera. And up on top, you've got this big, huge crane that's probably lifting multiple blocks at once. That's a huge crane. And you can find these in hundreds of old construction photos that are out there if you actually look for them. A little quote and shout out from AEWAR and Wooden Nickels here.
So if you're saying you can't find one photograph, again, it comes down to 2 things. 1, you're lying, or 2, you have a deficiency when it comes to research aptitude.
Thank you guys for pointing out what I've been saying for years now, is if these people cannot find these photos, then why are you listening to them in the first place? They're either lying or they're horrible researchers. And Mark Twain nailed it. It's easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. And now for the red brick people out there that I still can't believe, but mystery tunnels. And this is how every one of those videos go. Well, up in Nova Scotia, they found some tunnels that there's no record of them. So I guess it's a lost society, or they, used to build their tunnels above ground and then it got mud flooded. And they had wooden floors. So what does that mean? It means they wanted to keep something up off of the wet, damp dirt floor. Then let's jump from Nova Scotia down to Florida, where they found another mystery tunnel. Nobody knows who built this sewer. So it's a huge mystery. And then, and it's right close to where there used to be this big red brick factory. I mean, this is Tatarian if I've ever seen it, which is actually synonymous with everything. I mean, because everything built was Tatarian if it was in a black and white photo. So how hard is it here is an ornate brick dome. It's going to take these two guys, a day, 2 days to do this? Big deal. It's what they do for a living, just like I build houses for a living, just like people used to build tunnels for a living. And these guys do great work. They put all these designs in there and everything. And stick around, guys, because we're going to cover the stone cutting too, even granite. Yeah, but where'd they get all the brick? There is one ingredient in brick: clay, dirt. This guy is bucketing water from an irrigation ditch down to this guy mixing up clay, slapping it on a wheelbarrow. Thousands of bricks out there. They throw it in a form, they let it dry out in the sun for a little while, then they cart it over by horse to the kiln, 10 feet deep, leaving some little spaces in there. They cover over the whole thing with sand and brick, and then they take coal and drop it down in those spaces that they left. Then they light everything on fire. I'll leave a link to these videos. And once again, this was like 6 or 7 people working at this whole place. And look at that. That's like a football field size area, 10 feet deep of solid brick. That's enough brick to probably build 5 of these brewing company buildings. So there you go, bro. Mystery solved. People were smart enough to bake clay and make bricks. Now, stone cutting. Let's start with limestone, a nice soft stone. And I've been saying this for years, guys. Limestone is soft. You can take a handsaw and cut limestone. That or they cut their laser hole and then just, put this in as a prop. And limestone is what most of the cathedrals are made out of. A lot of these big structures are made out. And, this is a more quote unquote advanced setup, but why wouldn't they have been able to make a setup like this 1,000 years ago? We've had steel around for a long time. All you have to do is put a couple bars on the end to keep everything in line and then have some mechanism of moving it back and forth, which can just be a bunch of guys shoving it back and forth the same way you use a 2-man saw. And I've used one of these cutting wood before. I've worked hard my whole life. That's some of the hardest work I have ever done. These Tataria occultists have obviously never done any work in their life, but are going to tell me that it can't be done. Okay, let's move up to granite, a really hard stone. Look at the size of that stone. It's huge. I mean, this has got to be laser cut precision, right? Guys, a 1/2 inch wide by 6 inch long steel spike will split stone. That's just the nature of stone. Well, you expect me to believe that they moved all that with horse and buggy? That would not be a problem whatsoever. I mean, they don't even have wheels here. They're just literally skidding all of this along. But that's not how these were built. Let's look at these cathedrals and see if they have anything in common. Strasbourg Cathedral, right next to the river there. Big, huge stone cathedral. Notre Dame, Paris, right off the river. The Cologne Cathedral, right off of the river. St. Paul's, river. Westminster Abbey, river. I don't care what you've been told. We're not any smarter than the people that came before us. We all have the same mental acuity, and these people were smart enough to quarry the rock up the river and float it down to the building site. And they had no problem whatsoever lifting the stones and putting them on the barge, as carved into this column, they show exactly how they lifted the stones up to build the Pantheon. That's the Pantheon. Here's a painting of the same thing going on. There's probably hundreds of these paintings and carvings out there. I'm just showing a couple examples. Now the grand finale, granite cutting. Here they are quarrying the granite. The blacksmith has to temper the tips of these steel spikes daily. You just quench the very end of it, and that's it. When you quench it in water, it hardens it. You don't want to harden the whole thing or it'll break. So you just quench the very end of it so you have a hard tip. They call this upsetting, which is where we actually get the term upset from. This is a cool little documentary. I'll leave it down in the links. This is one guy out here that has carved all of this stuff, and this is just what he has in stock at the moment. So this is probably just the last month or two worth of work. Big, huge baptismal out of granite right there. This one guy works at the yard there and makes gravestones and all that type of stuff. Now, the guy's out in the field here, just like any other construction job. You know, you've got a guy over there prepping the stones, getting them ready, and then you've got, and look, these are just some old guys out here laying these blocks. And then they build this wall right here on this bank. And then up top, you got a couple more old guys up here doing the railing around the top. And contrary to what everybody says on the internet, they don't usually use hammer and chisel. It's a mallet and chisel, because then you don't have to sit there and smack steel on steel all day and listen to it. And then once everything's set in place, they take another stone of the same material, granite here, and they just sit there and grind it, you know, to make all of the butt joints flush. If it's a little bit off, then they just grind it down. And here are some very ornate, detailed capitals. That's the little fancy piece that's on top of columns, a capital. And none of this is rocket surgery. You draw out your design, you get your chisel, and you go to work. If you do this for years of your life, then you get really good at it. After it's carved and sanded out, then they just take felt and rub it out and polish it. And look at what this guy just carved. Look what's on each side of the round part there. Those are fasciae. Those are the earthquake machines. So these guys in the 70s still knew about the earthquake machines. So I am sorry if you have been duped by keyboard Comanches that don't know the first thing about actual work out in the real world. But what I've just shown you is how things were done for thousands of years prior to the Industrial Revolution. And then we started getting crazy with technology and made everything go that much faster. So please do not come at me and start calling me all these names and all this crap about how all history is fake because Tartaria and all this. These women from 100 years ago can work 99% of the males of today under the table. And instead of getting mad at me for telling you the truth, why don't you go over to those channels that are grifting everybody and tell them this?
So if you're saying you can't find one photograph, again, it comes down to two things. One, you're lying, or two, you have a deficiency when it comes to research aptitude.